The scariest man in rap just got disarmed on a live microphone, and the person holding the weapon is the same podcaster who spent the last 3 years calling him his mans. When the smoke cleared, there was nothing left of Drake's big warning but ashes, a bracelet flex, and a courtroom receipt that this entire culture flat out refuses to forget. What is good, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Now listen, before we get into any of this, I need you to understand the weight of what just happened this week, because this is not another throwaway podcast clip floating around the timeline. This is the moment the last layer of fear around him officially evaporated, and it happened on a platform that the man himself practically furnished with his own cosigns over the years. I'm going to walk you through exactly what was said, decode who that warning was really aimed at, explain why Joe Budden of all people grabbed the emergency brake on live air, and lay out what all of this means for every rapper watching from the sideline right now. And honestly, let's keep it a buck. Even a leftover one-liner from Drake gets more coverage than most rappers' entire album rollouts. But coverage and fear are two completely different currencies, and one of those currencies just went bankrupt in front of the whole world. So if you're ready for this one, you already know the assignment. Leave a like, hit subscribe, and share this with somebody who still believes the pen talk lands the same way in 2026. Because from the stream warning to the legal paperwork, the myth is spiraling and crashing out. And we are going to need every single second of this. So let's dig in. So for anybody who somehow missed it, Drake popped out on that kick stream with the state crowd the other night. And in the middle of the gambling, the jewelry talk, and the general victory lap energy, he decided to look directly into the camera and address the rap game. His words, and I'm paraphrasing the spirit of it cleanly: appreciate the love. The last few months have been incredible. I dropped 3 on their heads. These other guys are dropping albums and it's hello and goodbye. And then came the line that set the whole timeline on fire. Be careful with that reply, because the pen isn't dry. That's the declaration. That's the whole shot. And look, on the surface, that's vintage Drake. Confident, dismissive, a little bit of that untouchable energy that made him the most feared hitmaker of his generation. The internet immediately did what the internet does. It split into camps, clipped the moment, and started the great decoding session. Who is he talking to? Who is that warning actually for? Is it a general shot at the field, or is there a specific target painted on somebody's back? Because here's the thing about warnings in hip-hop. A warning with no name on it is either a smoke signal for everybody or a shield for nobody. And figuring out which one this is matters more than the line itself. Now, I've sat with this for days. I've read every theory, I've watched every breakdown, and after all of that, there's only one name that makes any logical sense here: A$AP Rocky. And I'm not guessing. The evidence trail is basically glowing in the dark. Think about who's actually been active in the ring with him lately. Not retired from it, not above it, not ignoring it, actively trading. You had shots aimed at Rocky on Iceman. You had shots fired right back on Rocky's own album, including that now infamous exchange of energy about stolen flows and stolen relationships. The whole "where's she at? Your girl ain't supposed to be single" back and forth. And it didn't stop at the music either. Rocky sat down for that Jason Lee interview and spoke on him with his chest. Then you've got Rihanna out partying with Rocky, tossing her own little grenades about the ex lurking in the studio, watching from the side, running in to go record about it. That's not a Cold War, that's an active one, with live rounds going both directions. So when Drake gets on a stream and warns unnamed rappers about replying carelessly, the only man currently standing in front of him throwing punches is A$AP Rocky. And before anybody jumps in the comments with the Jay-Z theory, I need you to be so serious right now. Nobody is warning Jay-Z about a reply. Nobody is telling Hive to be careful because the pen has ink. Let's retire that immediately. And scan the rest of the board while we're at it. Big Sean hasn't said a word, and honestly, Big Sean would have more reason than most to feel some type of way. Similar styles, similar lanes, careers that ended up in completely different stratospheres, but he's silent. Tyler's not engaging, Baby Keem's not engaging, Wale's not engaging. The list of rappers currently in any kind of active tension with Drake begins and ends with one man, and his name is A$AP Rocky. And let me add one more layer to this decoding, because it matters for everything else we're about to get into. The timing of Drake's warning is doing a lot of silent work here. This didn't come in a vacuum. This came at the tail end of what has been, commercially speaking, one of the strongest stretches Drake has had since the war ended. 3 projects moved, the charts bent, the narrative machine started humming again about a comeback, about a redemption arc, about the king reclaiming the throne. And that's exactly why the warning had to happen now. When you're down, you don't warn anybody. There's no leverage in it. You warn people from a high. You warn people when the numbers are moving, when the fans are chanting, when it feels like the wind is back at your back. That's not strategy, that's timing 101. But it also exposes the insecurity underneath it, because if the position was as solid as the stream suggests, the warning wouldn't be necessary at all. Confident kings don't announce that the sword is still sharp, they just carry it. The fact that Drake felt the need to say it out loud on a gambling stream between bracelet reveals tells you the silence from the MC community was starting to echo a little too loud in his direction. But here's where the story detonates. Because while the timeline was busy decoding who the warning was for, a brand new episode of the Joe Budden podcast dropped, and Joe Budden himself, personally, on his own microphone, stepped in front of the warning and said two words that hit harder than anything Drake said on that entire stream: stop it. And I need you to sit with what that means, because if you know me, you know I have dragged that podcast up and down this channel for years. I've questioned the takes, I've questioned the consistency, I've questioned the whole operation. So understand the gravity when I tell you that this might be the first time in a very long time where I fully, completely, without a single asterisk, stand behind a Joe Budden take. And the take is simple, but surgical. The rappers who can actually rap, the real MCs in this game right now, are not scared of Drake. Nobody's afraid. Nobody's sitting at home wondering whether the pen is dry or wet or dipped in gold or whatever jewelry-adjacent metaphor we're dressing it up in this week. Nobody cares about the signature. And the reason that lands so heavy coming from Budden is that this is not a hater talking. This is the guy who has carried water for him through the darkest stretches of the last 2 years. When the man's own fortress starts echoing the word "stop it" back at him, the walls aren't just cracked, they're coming down.
And stay with me here, because the Joe Budden angle has a second floor that most of the timeline completely missed. Joe didn't just disagree with the warning, he reframed the entire power structure around it. The essence of what he put on the table was this: there was a time, years ago, when a warning from him like this would have genuinely instilled fear. That's a historical fact. There was an era where a Drake subliminal could reroute a career, where a lukewarm Drake mention could freeze a rollout, where rappers really did move carefully around him. Joe's point wasn't that Drake was never dangerous. Joe's point was that the era is over, and the reason it's over isn't emotional, it's evidentiary. 2 public losses, 1 legal filing, 0 examples made sense. Fear in hip-hop is not a reputation you keep, it's a debt you have to keep paying, and the account has been empty for a while now. And here's the cold part. Joe said all of this as somebody who still admits the pen is wet. He gave Drake the talent credit and took the fear credit in the same breath. That's the most surgical version of this critique there is, because it can't be dismissed as hating. It's a fan of the music reading the culture its own reflection. And what made the whole segment even brutal was the context wrapped around it, because this wasn't a sober, strategic response to a warning. This stream moment he chose for his big tough guy declaration was surrounded by bracelet talk, double chrome, Cartier, price tags he didn't even want to say out loud. There was literal purring happening on this stream. The panel pointed out what a lot of us were already thinking. He just released 3 projects with barely a single quotable line between all of them, and the first thing he wanted to flex in front of the culture was the pen. That's baffling. That's backwards. That's a man reaching for a weapon that the culture watched jam on him in front of millions. And then came maybe the most revealing moment of the entire episode. One of the voices who has spent years calling this man his mans, years publicly riding for the music, the movement, all of it, suddenly reversing on camera. That's not my mans. I don't want to know him. Why would I want to meet another man? Which, by the way, is an insane deflection. This same person sits in a room full of men twice a week for a living. But the deflection isn't the story. The story is the retreat. When somebody who staked their public credibility on standing next to you starts moonwalking away the moment your tough talk turns corny, that tells you exactly how the warning landed with the people who were supposed to amplify it. Think about the sequence one more time, because the order of operations is devastating. First, he spends years as the most defended man in podcasting. Second, he loses the biggest battle in genre history. Third, and this is crucial, the defenses kept coming anyway. Through the loss, through the memes, through the funeral the internet held for his credibility, that same room of voices kept calling him his mans, kept riding for the music, kept the bridge standing. It took bracelet talk and a purring session on a gambling stream for the first real public crack to form. Not the loss, not the lawsuit, the outfit flex. That's how thin the patience has gotten. The final straw wasn't a rap transgression at all, it was a vibe violation. When your own amplifiers start unplugging over aesthetics, the foundation underneath the tough talk isn't stable. And it raises a question nobody on that panel wanted to sit with. If the warning had come from the 2018 version of Drake, would anybody in that room have laughed? Of course not. The laughter isn't about the line. The laughter is about the ledger.
Now, let me be very clear about something before the comments section loses its collective mind, because I'm not interested in being untruthful for engagement. Nobody with functioning ears is claiming Drake can't rap. Nobody said the music he made during the battles was trash. Go back and listen. The records had fire in them. The pen was never the joke. The problem was never ability. The problem is that the last time the pen got unsheathed in a real war, somebody else was simply better. That's it. That's the whole verdict. He took a loss to Pusha T, took some time, reloaded, came back, and then walked into Kendrick Lamar and took the most public, most cultural, most undeniable loss the genre has ever produced. 2 losses, back-to-back eras, both of them decisive. And here's the part that matters for everything happening right now. There has never been a hip-hop precedent for talking the toughest right after the whole world watched you lose without making a single example of anybody first. You don't get to skip that step. The schoolyard watched the fight. You can be the toughest kid who ever lost, and it still doesn't matter, because until somebody new gets dropped, the hallway isn't flinching. That's not hate. That's just how the food chain has always worked. And here's the part of the debate that really exposes where the goalposts have moved. When it was put to the panel plainly, can Drake still threaten whoever he wants, the room split, and the split is the story. One side argued that yes, technically, anybody can threaten anybody, and he has the pen to back it up against a wide field of names. The other side cut through it with the only question that actually matters. A threat and a fear are not the same thing. Anybody can issue a threat. A toddler can issue a threat. The currency of a threat is measured entirely by whether the recipient's behavior changes. And right now, there is not a single MC of consequence whose behavior would change 1 millimeter because he warned them about a reply. Kendrick? Please, that chapter closed in front of the whole planet, and nobody resurrects on the 3rd day. Cole? Retired from the field by his own hand. Rocky? Already swinging, already landing, already unbothered. So you're left issuing a warning into a room where every single person in it has either beaten you, left the game, or is actively punching at you. That's not a warning. That's a voicemail nobody's checking. But we still haven't gotten to the part that makes all of this so much worse for Drake. And this is the part that too many people in this space keep trying to tiptoe around. So let me plant both feet and say it plainly. The last battle Drake lost didn't end in the booth. It ended in a courtroom. The final thing Drake wrote that the entire culture sat down and read was not a verse, it was a legal statement. And I have read that paperwork more times than I care to admit, so we're not going to be disingenuous about what's in it. This is not speculation. In black and white, the argument was made that the label was artificially inflating the very song that beat him. And beyond that, and this is the part that still stops me cold every single time, the paperwork characterized a rap record as a physical threat to his body. A diss track framed as a call for vigilante justice submitted to a judge. Do you understand what that does to a warning like be careful how you reply? It hollows it out completely. You cannot threaten the booth after you subpoenaed it. You cannot tell MCs to watch their mouth in a genre where your last move was putting another man's lyrics in front of lawyers. If we're going to keep having conversations about who's warning who's getting in the booth, who's rapping at who, fine. But that piece of context is welded to the conversation permanently now. It cannot be unbolted. It cannot be omitted. Any analysis of Drake's pen in 2026 that leaves out the legal filing isn't analysis, it's fan fiction. And this is why so many people, Budden included, keep saying the same thing from different angles. Drake isn't feared as a competitor anymore, he's handled with caution as a litigant. And those are two very different reputations to carry into a rap beef. One makes rappers sharpen their pens, the other makes them shrug and go back to work. And since everybody wants to hand out grace and second chances, let's be intellectually honest across the board, because this is the part where a lot of people are about to get uncomfortable. The argument being made in Drake's defense goes like this. Sure, he lost. Sure, he sued. but he's still nice, and if he goes and makes an example out of somebody, the fear comes right back. Okay, fine. Let's accept that logic completely. Now apply it evenly. Does J. Cole get that same grace? Think about it. Cole stepped into a battle, felt the temperature, apologized, and walked away. And for that, large chunks of the internet revoked his competitive card permanently. Every time J. Cole says anything even remotely spicy on a record now, there's a whole section of the culture that covers its ears and says he lost the right. But here's the difference nobody wants to say out loud. J. Cole apologized for a verse. He didn't sue anybody over one. He didn't put another rapper's lyrics into a legal document. If the man with the courtroom filing gets an open path back to being feared, then the man who simply said "my bad" on wax deserves that same road back, at minimum. I'm not saying Cole will ever battle again. I don't think he wants to, and that's his right. But the double standard stinks, and if we're moving goalposts for Drake, we better be hauling the same goalposts for J. Cole, or we should just admit the standards were never about rap in the first place. And honestly, I want your read on this one. Does Cole get the same grace or not? Sound off below, but bring logic with you, not just loyalty. So now let's map the actual battlefield, because once you accept that the warning exists, the obvious next question is the one the podcast kept circling. Who is it even capable of reaching? Run the roster. Is Drake warning Gunna, Young Thug, Lil Yachty, Don Toliver? Maybe in the loosest, most abstract sense, sure, a warning can be aimed at whoever it applies to, but none of those names are MCs in the traditional bar-for-bar come see about me sense, and warning them costs nothing. The whole point of a warning is the fear it generates in people who could actually answer, and that's where the whole thing collapses, because the names that could actually answer are exactly the names who are the least scared. So what are we left with? A warning that only lands on people it was never meant to threaten, bouncing off the very MCs it was designed to shake. That's not a warning, that's weather. It's noise in the atmosphere that nobody has to change their plans for. And the most telling detail from that entire podcast segment, the detail almost nobody clocked, is that through all the debate about who he could be talking to, A$AP Rocky's name barely came up, even though Rocky is quite literally the only rapper on planet Earth currently exchanging shots with him. The man in the actual ring wasn't even part of the fear conversation. That should tell you everything about how much fear that warning is generating. Here's my honest read on what that stream moment really was, and I don't think it's complicated once you strip the shine off it. That warning wasn't for rappers, it was for the fans. Think about who that performance serves.
There's a massive audience out there that genuinely believes Drake didn't lose anything, that he's still the top of the mountain, the best rapper, the best dressed, the best at everything. And that audience has been starving for a moment where he sounds like the old untouchable version of himself again. That stream gave it to him. The jewelry, the confidence, the pen talk, that's a highlight reel for the home crowd. It's performative toughness produced for the people already in the tent, because the people outside the tent stopped buying tickets 2 battles ago. And I want to be fair here one more time, because the pen itself was never the problem. Nobody serious ever said his battle records were weak. They said Kendrick was better. And being second best in the biggest rap war ever fought is not a talent problem, it's a standing problem. But standing is exactly what a warning is supposed to project, and you can't project standing you don't currently have. Right now, Drake is in a position where he's lucky that A$AP Rocky is even entertaining him, because the honest truth is that engaging with him competitively in 2026 is starting to look less like a challenge and more like charity. When responding to you reads as bullying, the warning era is over, and no amount of stream charisma changes that until an example gets made. That's the whole ballgame. Now, if you're wondering what the path back even looks like, because there is one, theoretically, it's worth laying out, even if the odds are long. The culture has a very specific, very old formula for restoring fear, and none of the steps involve streams, charts, or jewelry. Step 1, somebody tests you publicly, by name. Step 2, you respond on wax, quickly, directly, no filters, no lawyers, no subliminals wrapped in plausible deniability. Step 3, the response has to be so decisive that the conversation ends. That's it. That's the entire recipe, and it's been in effect since the earliest days of the genre. The problem for him is that every element of his recent behavior runs opposite to that formula. The responses have been slow, indirect, and lawyered. The warnings have been aimed at nobody in particular,
and the energy has been spent on the audience instead of the opposition. Until one of those things flips, the warning economy stays closed. And the wildest part? Everybody around him knows it. The panel knew it. The timeline knew it. Deep down, I suspect Drake knows it too, which is exactly why the warning was vague enough to mean everything and nobody at the same time. So where does that leave everything? Exactly where the podcast left it. And honestly, exactly where the culture left it months ago. The pen isn't dry. Nobody serious ever claimed it was. But the fear is gone. The field is unbothered. The only live opponent is A$AP Rocky, and the last document the culture read from Drake had a case number on it. A warning without fear behind it is just content, and that's the part that should worry his side the most, because he's never had a problem being content. The problem is he used to be content that rappers were afraid of. Now he's content that podcasters fact-check in real time, with his own former defenders leading the inspection. And look, I don't have some galaxy brain insane take to wrap this up with. Sometimes the story is exactly what it looks like. A legend talked tough on a stream, the toughest room in podcasting told him to stop it, and the only man he's actually beefing with kept doing push-ups in the corner without saying a word. That's the whole picture. But I'm curious where y'all land.